Hey guys, welcome to the stream. We had a little break this afternoon, but we're back now and ready to go. We made a couple of changes last night after the stream, so let's have a quick look at them. Just a couple, nothing dramatic. Just a couple of things to work on, but we now have a roaring fire in the corner. And we have our set of pictures up here. We've set up our knights here that are going to block at some point. Tables and chairs, more bookcases, just generally padding stuff out, right? And the other thing we did, I believe, is we added our messages on the walls. Right, now, where did I put these? Did I put them in the props? Indeed I did. But the thing is, I haven't brought these in yet. Okay. So theoretically, I haven't brought these in. Okay. Now, I believe that this is them here. Right, these are my new test ones with a different this is a different one, right? Okay. So I've got this new font which we can use, but I got my tablet plugged in today and we can basically draw some blood splatters off it, see how that looks, and if we're happy with the look then we'll take it from there, right? But what we want to do is have a look at this in the game. Right, so basically what we'll do is we'll set these all to this, right? So I was testing out this one, but this is a little bit too neat and tidy. I do like this font, but this is a font that's in Substance Painter. Right, so I'd need to find something like that. I'm sure I could. But these things, there's that many fonts, you've got to have the right search quote. And if you've not got the right search quote, then you don't get the one you want, really. So anyway, now we should be able to test this and have a look to see how this looks on a wall. But in the first instance, we can actually go to BP layout straight. We can go to the layout. We can go to the decal. Right, which is just a plane. and it's the BP decal, so we need to change this one. Okay, so we need to default this one to the right thing, right? Which we can't really set it as a default. What we can do is, we know we need to spin it 90 degrees. Okay, because those originally coming out of Substance Painter, it was kind of at the wrong angle. Okay, so if we save that, then we simulate, right, and now we can go to here and we can simulate. Okay, and now, whoopsie, now we want to spin this around. Right, save that. Then we can simulate it. And it doesn't seem to want to give us our text, which is fine, we'll get there. Ah, I had it there. Right, what we'll do is we'll just run the game and check it for there. Okay, so if we press play, ooh, interesting. Must have done a reset on the making a mock up of this, I can tell you that. Oh, that's interesting. That is interesting indeed. If you notice there, guys, that did not work properly. Right, that end level did not work. I'm going to press play again. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to do a quick check on a couple of things here, because there's a couple of things that appear to have not saved. I did have a power outage the other day, which did make a couple of changes, but it might have made a couple of changes more than I thought. Okay, So let me just check Pawn Chronicles. Right, now it should be in the event graph movement. That looks okay. Because I had to bypass the head bob, right? Because the animations are now generating the head bob. Okay. So in effect, what I can do is I can remove that. I can remove that. I can remove that. I can remove that. Now, do we need this? Is the question. We could use it, right? We can still use it as moving, right? It was originally just used for tracking the metal balls. But we'll leave it in for now because it is a useful variable to have. Okay, but other than that, I believe that these can all go. So I'm just going to move them out of the way just now. Okay. And effectively, I can just straighten these things up and take it from there. Now, if there's anybody watching the chat that wants a little tutorial on anything, any newcomers that are just learning Unreal Engine, let me know. As long as it's something to do with a fundamental. I get a lot of questions asking for tutorials on very, very specific abstract concepts, like, for example, do me a combat system, and that's basically all they tell me, which is obviously impossible because, number one, I don't know what type of game it is, and they don't tell me, so it's like, how am I supposed to write a combat system for a game? It could be an RPG, it could be a first-person shooter, it could be a JRPG, it could be anything. It could be an XCOM, turn-based, it could be anything. So I tend to stay away from that type of tutorial because, number one, basically somebody is just asking you to write a game for them by doing that, and that's not the way to learn. I'm just tidying up here. So I prefer to keep any tutorials I do or little lessons to fundamentals of like how you do a specific thing, so that then you can basically make anything you want. Because at the end of the day, that's where you want to be. You want to learn enough that whatever you need to make, you've got a general idea of how to go about making it. Okay, like for example, a hotbar, inventory system, whatever. But there's certain concepts and fundamentals that you've got to learn in Unreal Engine first to be able to then make all these things yourself, right? So, as I said, I prefer to work on a basis where I teach a really fundamental thing. For example, a structure or something like that that's going to come in useful for inventories, for combat systems, for all sorts of things. And that'll begin to move you in a direction that you can actually do all these things yourself, which, you know, that's kind of the point of teaching, rather than just teaching you how to do one simple or one very complicated thing in a particular way. Anyway, we've tidied that up, and I wanted to just check that this was still the code that was getting used. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to check on this. And the thing here is, in this animation blueprint, it is at point. Right, what if I set this to 0.6? Right, because it's the animation that's playing too fast. Right? I mean, fundamentally that's better, right? But the point is that you're not moving any slower. It's just playing the animation slightly slower. Right? Because you tended to be hopping up and down like a bunny rabbit at full speed, which might be okay in a first person shooter, but it's not okay in this particular game. Right? Now, the other thing that I did last night, which was a trial and error thing, which I've never really played with before, but I'll explain it to you anyway. Right? And that is, if I go back actually to that animation blueprint, right? And we go back to here. Is this right? Yeah. So if we go to the event graph, right, we've got our steps, right, our footsteps, and we're using the footsteps sound attenuation, right? Now, what I did was I created a fireplace sound attenuation, and basically I pulled the values right down. I copied this one, and then I started mucking about with the values of the inner radius and the fall off distance, etc. And then I changed the minimum distance in the air absorptions. I brought these right down as well, so that, because the default one for this footsteps needs to change as well, because this is way too high, right? This is way too high. Okay, now what I should actually do here is I should duplicate this again, and we should really make it door. Right, we should give the door its own one, and then start changing the values in here. So just to let you see the difference, right? Like, a difference, and this is one I've never changed, is 3000 and 1200, right? Whereas when I was playing with this fireplace, this eventually ended up at 300 and 800, rather than, so it was 300, 800. So this has came down by nearly 75%. let's say 66%, and the same with this one, and then 2000, 4000, and where is it? This has came down to 400, 600 instead of 2000, 4000, right? So we brought the sound right, attenuation right down in the fall offs, right? So hopefully if I turn on the sound for you guys, you should be able to hear this. Let me know in the chat if you can hear this. That when I go into the gateway, right, I think you can barely hear it at the moment. You can barely hear the fireplace. But now you get a better, right? So basically the way, if I set up at the footsteps, I could never really get far enough away from it, right, to play the sound. Now, what I should really do in this case is also go to our clock. Now, I don't know if I set up a clock attenuation. And these are all under footstep sounds. Right, so I should really move these out of here. I'm pretty sure I've got an SFX folder. So what I shall do is I'll select all of these and I'll put them into SFX. Now, the other thing I did have a play with last night but couldn't get working was the rain on a window, right? Now, if we look here, I'll show you what I was trying to do. Right, so in the gateway here, you can see that we've got rain outside, right? So I've added rain outside, right? But I was going to be super clever about it, right? So I got this rain material. We're going to have to open up that map again to let you see this, right? But the problem is that our rain material works, but it doesn't work in tandem with the materials that we're using. Right, now I did have a couple of ways of doing this. Which I tried, but I could never get it to work quite how I wanted it to work. I'll show you what I mean. Right. So, the interesting thing here is what I wanted was the rain to be going down, like hitting the, you know, the window panes, right? So I had this rain material, right? And at first I did a couple of tests, and you'll see that it actually works blooming good if you just do it on its own. Right, I can show you this. Okay, so if I just basically put this material instance onto there, you can't really see it very well, but if I change it to there, you can see it. Right? So you can kind of see that. That's pretty good. But the problem is, I couldn't get it to go onto the individual panes. So then what I tried was to make individual planes that cover the actual panes. But that didn't really work either. Right? Because the problem is you need a light source. Now, you might actually be able to do it. Let me try something. I'm going to try this quick. I don't think it's going to work, right? But we'll try it anyway. I'm just wondering if we do it in post-process, it might work better. The point I was trying to make is you need a light source, right? To be bouncing off the material, or you can't really see it very well. Now, I don't know if I have to press play on this to get it to work. Right, I guess there's a bit more setup to do for this, but it's actually compiling. We'll give it a minute to compile, shall we? Well, it's compiled and it's not showing right. Okay, we need to have a look at the documentation on implementing the post-process one. Well, there's a thing. I don't think I've got a post-process volume here. So, that ain't gonna work. Yeah, I've got a post-process volume. Does it cover that though? That's the question. I'm going to say yeah. Yeah, it certainly does. I'm going to set this plane down a bit, basically, minus 300. I'm going to save that because the rain isn't going far enough down, so that when you actually look at the rain from the window, it looks like it stops at a... Yeah, see, it's still doing it, kinda. It's kinda still doing it. Drag it through here, but let's have a look if that's better. That looks okay. That looks okay. Right. Anyway. So, as I said, I'll have to have a look at documentation on that one for the post-processing version of this. And the material function one as well. But basically, I couldn't do... Because basically what you do is you copy this part here and add it to your current thing. So let me show you that, right? So if I copy this, right, and I'm going to have to find a basic material here. Okay, so that's not the best idea. Oh, give me something to work with here, will you? Let me have a look to see what we've got regarding textures and materials here, and ones that we're using, right? Because these are very complicated materials, the way these materials are set up, right? Like if we go to here and cupboard, this one might not be so bad, right? But if we go into here, yeah, this might work. This one might actually work. Right, so if I paste this in here, right, and then if this decides to work for a minute, what we do is we grab the output normal, right, and we plug it in there, and then the output from this we plug it into the normal, and that's how you do it if it's an easy one like this one, right? But the problem is the ones for all the multiple parts, it's using like about 4 levels deep of materials. Right? So we've now got our BP covered. Right? And we should be able to simulate it. And I believe it is doing it. Right? But again, we've not got a very good light. But I believe that this is a cupboard. Right, so this is BB key cupboard 1, right? So that's fine. So if we press play, there should be rain on this. And there is. See it? It's not very clear, but it's definitely there. Okay? You can see it. It's definitely there. Now, the interesting thing would be here, if I go back to that material, right? And I'm just wondering if I can... I'm wondering if there's a way here that I can adjust this to give me like a red. Right? Because if it's going on the normal, it's not going to give me any colour. Right? So it's kind of like I need to multiply by this. In fact, no I don't. Hi somebody, how you doing, bud? Right, so basically what this is doing is it's just giving me a normal, right? And from that point of view, let's try something, right? We're on a let's try something phase at the moment, so let's try something. So this is giving us the normal out. Right, so we're going to multiply this, right? Yeah, I'm just playing about here. So then we're going to do vector 3. Vector, well, we don't want a vector parameter, we want a constant 3 vector, right? And this is going to be, let's say, red, right? Except we're going to like do that. Okay. And let's just, for a laugh, let's just for a little bit of a laugh, plug that in there. Plug that in there. Plug that in there. And see what we end up with. Well, the game's coming along nicely. We've got a few nice things happening. Right, I'm going to do a play on that. I'm going to see what we actually get here. Apparently nothing. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll make this like a stupid colour, like yellow, except like really bright yellow. So we make that 0.5. I'll show you in a minute what we've done, right? Done. That kinda is doing something, but kinda not as well. It's doing something very, very minor. I'm going to stop that. Okay, so that Oh, yeah, I've got a grandfather clock in the game. I'll show you in a second. And it works. I actually made it for another game and then just brought it into this game because it makes sense. Right, so this goes straight into normal. And that should be us back to where we were. Right, that's us exactly back to where we were. Right, so if I go back to the main menu, I'll show you the changes that I've made. It's been minor changes, but these are like the minor changes that you end up having to do anyway, so anything that's pushing you slightly forward is a good thing. Doesn't matter if it seems to be a very small thing or not. Right, so, well, one of the first things I did was change this to be a scrolling box, right? And we're going to do some more to this, so that it only shows I think my modeler animator guy made it, or at least had the assets for it. Right, so this is going to basically show the ones that are open to you. But last night I just made sure that all of this was lining up and it was showing everything and the scroll bar was working and all that stuff. Right. The next thing I did was I added some stuff to our level. I added rain outside, which was why I was trying to get the rain on the windows working, which wasn't quite successful. But I got my nice fire going. Right? And then if you go up here, there you go, grandfather clock. And if you look closely, you'll notice that it actually works. And I don't know if you can hear that or not. I'll tell you what, yeah, I've still got the sound on, haven't I, for you guys. So you should be able to hear this. Right, so there you go, grandfather clock works. I think all you really need is the numbers, right? Because the hands can be just basically flat planes. Oh, I didn't make the minute hand move. Thought I did, but at least the second hand goes. Right. So, yeah. So that was another thing. So we've added to the gateway, and then what we've done is I had those a grandfather clock chiming sound somewhere. Right, but what was it going? Yeah, okay. So now we have our animation where you see the hands going when we're moving. Right. We need it a tiny bit faster, I think. right? And that means that I've now got the animation blueprint working, which means that you've got the sounds, the correct sounds for the footsteps. Okay? So I'm going to go back to our player. And if we go to animation BP arms, you can now see that I've got this set up for the steps. So that's all great. And where is it? Ah, right, okay. It's in here. Click on that. Where is it? I've completely forget where I moved this. Where do you actually do this? This idle run. This animation, yeah, okay. Right, it's this one here, right? I've set it to 0.6. Go away, bots. Right, but I think we'll go to 0.7. Right. I'm trying to find a number I'm comfortable with it there. So I'm just slowing down. If the animation plays at full speed, then basically what happens is it kind of jumps up and down like a bunny rabbit, which is okay for first person shooters, but it's not okay for this. Right? Yeah, there we go. Right, so if you listen, right, if you can tell me the difference. This is me walking on wood, right, and this is when it goes onto carpet. So you can hear the difference, you see, of when I'm on the carpet and when I'm on the wood. Okay, so we got all that working. Oh yeah, that's what was. You see, I end up down a big tunnel, right? Because what I was actually doing in the first place was checking my messages on the wall. Right, give me 1 second. Oh damn it. I've not got the game instance, so that's not, well, it does let me enter there, but I should have reset it. Oh yeah, I did go from, right, okay, so we're okay. Right, I'm going to stop this. Right, okay, how do you do footsteps? Well, first of all, you need the footstep sounds. Is it 5.1? No, it's 4.27. Right, so how do you do footsteps? Okay, well, it's done in your animation blueprint, right? And it's in the event graph, in here, and basically this is it here. Now, I use a few techniques here, so it's not going to be a simple, straightforward thing for you, because there's a few advanced topics here. the concept of it is fairly straightforward to actually describe, right? But there's a couple of things in here that I've got that you might find are weird, but there is a reason for them. Okay, so but the first thing you do, right, is if you look at your, let's say your, you can't do it, or it's very difficult to do, right? Because you don't know where the player's feet are in relation to the floor. Okay, so what you do, I'll explain it in animation, right? Because it's easier to explain to you how you actually do this. What you do is you get your animation. So say for example I'm using my animation run, okay, third person run. So what you do is you add notifies at the point where their foot hits the ground, okay, so like here and then here, okay. Then this creates an event in your animation graph, okay, which is this, and it's called step, which is what I actually called it, okay. You'll notice I called it step. So this adds an event, so when it's playing the animation, if it hits a frame with a notify, it automatically triggers this event, okay. So the next thing I do is I fire a line trace straight down. I check the physical material that I hit, and then in a function library I have it set up to return a cue, a sound cue, a random sound cue from each of the different physical materials, right? And then this returns the sound cue and plays it at the actor location, right? And that's how you do it, right? But like this is a kind of, you don't need to do this, but this is a very a tidier way of doing it, because I can actually, because it's in a function library, I can actually call this from any of the animation blueprints, a monster one, a player one, anything, right? I can call it from anywhere, not necessarily even an animation blueprint. I can call this function from anywhere in the game, right? Now to prove that to you, I am in my animation blueprint, right? But let's say I wanted my cupboard, or let's have a look at what we've got here, right? We've got our blueprints. Say for example my cupboard was going to make footstep noises based on the physical material that it's standing on, right? I can actually say return physical material, right? And that's because I've created a blueprint function library with the function called return physical footstep. I pass in a physical material and it gives me out a cue, okay. So, and as I said, I can call this from any blueprint anywhere. Well, you can, there's quite a few ways you can add animations, right? But your mannequin has already got animations, right? So if you look at a third person basic project, your player running around is an animation. It's actually using an animation blueprint, right? So you can basically just open up the third player character and check what animation blueprint it's using, then open it up and have a look at it to see what it's doing. It's a pretty basic one, but it's still going to give you an idea. Yeah, that's an animation. It's got an animation blueprint. I think it has anyway. Right, but you can do the same thing. You can, your third person arms thing has still got an animation blueprint, I believe. Right? And you can open up that animation and add notifies to it so that it's actually doing steps. Right? So as one arm goes up, you maybe do the left step, and when the left hand goes up, you play the right step. You'll need to work it out. You'll need to look at somebody running to see what the physics of it are, but I'm pretty sure that's how it's going to work. But for you, as I told you the other day, do a menu. Hi, The Realm, how are you today? Did you get your door working? No worries, The Realm, no worries. Like and subscribe. Sign up for the Patreon. Nah, you're welcome, mate. Right, I'm going to go and grab a cigarette. I'm in the mood for tutorials again, so if you've got some other easy thing that you want to see how to do, between the two of you, The Realm and somebody, something simple, don't say something ridiculous like, oh, can you show me how to do a combat system, right, which I got asked today in a comment on one of my videos. Right, so I shall be back in 2 minutes, don't go anywhere, and we shall have a look at something else, whether it's doing something in the game or whether it's answering one of your questions or whatever. I'll be right back. Okay, we are back. So, what have we got? My editor keeps telling me my video is exceeded. Is that the texture thing? Yeah, there's a way you can do that. And there's a way you can clear that out, but just don't worry about it. Mine does it all the time. I'm using first person, so if I was to add third person mannequin, and if I was to add the mannequin and animations from third person to third person, that wouldn't work, right? But you can retarget animations, right? But again, you're jumping ahead of yourself. I told you. What you need to learn to do is a menu. Okay? I'm sorry, but you just need to do the boring stuff. You've got to walk before you can run. Okay? So, you don't want to be See, right, here's a point for both of you, right? Forget the fact that you're going to create a game, right? Because you're not. Not on your first go, right? So your first few projects should be just playing around, right? You should be trying things. You should be trying a first person one, having a look at that to do maybe some animation stuff, right? Then you should be looking at third person stuff, mucking about with the camera on that, looking at third person one is animation stuff. First person one, you can look at that and you can see how that works, because it's a bit different and it's set up in a way that allows you to basically network stuff, but you don't want to even go there, right? You don't even want to be even thinking about networky stuff, right? Because that's 10 times more complicated than just doing the normal stuff, right? So you just need to be learning the basics, right? Fundamentally, how to move stuff about, how things work, how to do simple things, how to work with widgets, right? Now, the realm for you as well, okay? As I said, you might have an idea of a project in your head, but the project you're working on right now is not going to get finished, right? You're never going to turn that into the final game that you want to make, okay? So just get that idea right out of your head. Your first few projects should just be you playing about, finding out how things work, playing with the basics, playing with widgets, playing with timelines, right? Playing with not even the animation stuff, right? Because the animation stuff it's not just one thing. It's linked to 3 different things, right? It's linked to your character movement, which is in your actual blueprint of your character, right? Whether that be your player or whether that be an NPC or an enemy or whatever, which is then linked to your animation blueprint, right? And it's your character movement that actually determines like the movement and animation of the character. And that is also going to be linked to a AI controller, which is then going to have an AI blackboard and behavior tree, right? So you'll have those 4 things all working together, right? But you're not at that stage yet, right? And if you try to do that type of thing, you're just going to get confused. You're not going to make any progress, and you're just going to be frustrated, right? So, for both of you, think of a game that you liked as a kid. A simple game, like it could be Pac-Man, it could be just something very, very simple, right? Do that. Right? Try to make it as close to the original that you remember as possible. Okay? That is basically the way I learned. Okay? Now, remember, I've got a head start on you two guys probably because I've been programming for about 40 years, 40 odd years, right? Right, well, this is the problem with beginners in Unreal Engine, right? Is they try to jump in at the deep end, right? And this is the problem with the likes of Unreal Engine and Unity and all the rest of them, right? They all advertise themselves as anybody can make a game. You know, all you need is Unreal Engine, all you need is Unity, all you need is Godot, whatever, right? Not true. Right? You still need to know what you're doing. You still need to learn the basics. You still need to learn the basics of programming, right? You might get a couple of things to work, but that's about it. Okay? So, you need to start with very simple. Well, you know, what can I say there, Realm? Environmental design doesn't help you do anything in Unreal Engine other than environmental design. Put it quite simply. It doesn't help you with anything. But the big mistake that new people to Unreal Engine or whatever engine it is, the problem they make is they try to make things that are just out of their reach at the moment, right? You don't walk into class first day and the teacher says, right, today we're learning nuclear physics, right? That's not what happens. Right? You've got to learn how to add. You've got to learn how to subtract. You've got to learn how to multiply, divide. Then you've got to learn how to do equations. Then you gradually build up your experience and what the complexity of what you can do. And at that point, right, that's the point where you start actually thinking about making a game, right? I'm not saying my point wasn't that environmental design is not easy or difficult. It's just like one discipline, right? You know, I'm not very good at environmental and especially like outdoor stuff, right? Which is why I stay away from it, right? But the point is, the coding in itself is not a problem either, as long as you get the basic concepts of how to program, right? As I've told to somebody, right, you're not going to get anywhere with Unreal Engine unless you know how to program, right? No matter how many times everybody tells you, you know, that you can use blueprints. Right? If you don't know the fundamentals of using arrays, what the variables are, you know, how to use references, how to pass references, all the stuff, then you're just basically not going to get anywhere, right? Because you'll not have the tools at your disposal, and I was explaining this to somebody yesterday, you're not going to have the tools at your disposal to do the things that you want to do. Right? To put it very simply, right? How do you spawn 10 things? Right? Well, I know how to do it like the back of my hand, right? But if you've not got programming experience, you won't know about a for loop, or a do while loop, or a for each loop, or whatever a loop is, right? So if you don't know what those things are, you're not got the tools to do it, right? So, as I said to somebody yesterday, if you don't know how to code and the basics of programming, you need to go and have a look at some tutorials on the fundamentals of programming. And it doesn't even matter what language. Right, okay, the realm. So where are you? I mean, there must be a point where you stop understanding, right? So if you can describe where it starts confusing you, then we've got a starting point, right? And what you've got to remember is as well, the realm, right, is, and I'm not saying this is you, right, but some people just can't program. Their brain just doesn't work that way, right? You know, it's like, I can't do art, right? I'm just terrible. Yeah, your problem, somebody, here's the thing. Don't just watch a video, okay? What to do is either, right, syntax is simple, right? Every language has basically the same commands at its disposal, right? Every language has a for loop, right? And basically in every language it's called a for loop, right? Java, C++, C Sharp, Basic is called a for loop, right? In Unreal Engine Blueprint it's called a for loop, right? Now, but this is where it changes slightly, because Blueprints call different things slightly differently. For example, in most languages, you have an if-then statement. If A, then B, okay? In most languages, like normal languages, like, again, Java, C++, Basic, Visual Basic, SQL is slightly different, but that's a database language, so we'll talk about that one, right? But in every one of the languages, it's if-then, okay? Now, the syntax is slightly different. Like, one of them you use brackets, one of them you won't use brackets, but fundamentally, it's the same. In Unreal Engine, it's not called an if statement, it's called a branch, right? But if you know programming, you know that a branch is an if-then statement, right? Another example, a case statement, right? A case statement is like when it's like an if-then, but multiple choice, okay? So you could say, if you passed in like a month, right? You would say case month, and then you would have January, do this, February, do that, March, do that, etc., etc., right? Now, again, in C++, in Visual Basic, in Java, it's called a case statement. Is it called a case statement? No, in C++ it's called switch. In C++ it's called switch. In Unreal Engine Blueprints it's called switch. But in certain languages, it's called a case statement, right? But here's the thing. If you learn the fundamentals, you will know all of these things exist within blueprints, right? You just need to know what the name of them is. For the most part, a lot of them will be the same, right? But there will be some slight differences, like the if is not an if, it's a branch, right? A case statement is not a case statement in Unreal Engine, it's called a switch, right? But they work exactly the same way as you would expect. Right? And the problem is that blueprints don't have syntax, okay? Syntax is like the way that, like, let's say an if-then statement is constructed, right? For example, in Visual Basic, you'll just say if A equals B, then do this, right? In C++, it's constructed slightly differently. It's you do if open brackets A equals B close brackets open curly brackets do this close curly brackets, right? I would say don't learn C++ or Python, right? I would say learn anything else, right? The point I'm trying to make here is every language is the same. They all have the basic same fundamental building blocks, right? The syntax will be slightly different, or they might be the same in certain languages, but every language has got variables. Every language has got arrays. Every language has got an if-then statement. Every language has got a case statement. Every language has got for each loops. Every language has got a for loop. You see what I'm saying? Right? And that's about it. As long as you know what all the variables are and when you use them, as long as you know what arrays are and how you use them, as long as you know what a for next loop is, an if statement is, a switch statement is, or a case, as long as you know the basics of that kind of stuff, then you can get going, right? But if you don't know those things, then you're going to struggle badly. And as I was saying to somebody yesterday, for you guys, you shouldn't be looking at trying to do a game right now, right? All you guys should be doing is playing with things, testing things out, finding out what a for loop does, finding out what a branch does, finding out what a switch does, right? And playing with them and seeing what happens, right? You shouldn't be trying to focus on an output at this point. You should be focusing on learning what things do, right? And then switching them about and then finding out what that does, right? Like yesterday I showed you the realm, yesterday I showed you the timeline thing, right? You should now go back and play with that, try different things, see what happens, right? Make a copy of your code and then plug your copy back in somewhere else, right? So that you've got the original, and then just play with it and see what each thing does, see what effect it has on the door, right? Because all of these little things like the timeline, right? The timeline's used all the time, right? So you need to know how to use a timeline, right? You need to be comfortable using a timeline. You don't want to be... You don't want to be scared to use a tool that you've got because you're not confident about how it works, right? Like, for example, for the widgets, right? You should be going in there and doing a menu, and you should be gradually building up your skills, building up, okay, I know how to use this particular thing in a widget, I know how to use this thing in a widget, and you should be gradually building up your knowledge, right? And then you'll get to a point where nothing's a problem, right? Because you've got all the tools. All you need to do now is work out the logic of how something works, right? And you'll be able to put it together, right? For example, on the previous thing I was working on before I was moved on to this, and only just stayed with this because it was kind of popular, right? And a lot of people liked watching me making this game. Having said that, a lot of people liked me making the other game as well. The other game is a lot more complicated. But the point was that I decided midway through doing one thing that I actually had to change my menu bar completely, right? And I thought, right, what am I going to do then? Well, I'm going to have to make a hotbar, right? And I'm at the point now where I don't even need to look at a tutorial. I know I've got my tools. I know how to use my tools. So I just put my tools into practice, right? But the problem is that Unreal Engine, Unity, and others give the impression to a beginner that they can make a game day one, and they can't, right? There is a learning curve. There's just no way around about it, okay? And that becomes slightly harder if you don't know how to program, because you need to learn how to do that as well. Okay? So, is there anything you guys want to see how to do a particular thing? And the best thing, guys, is to make mistakes, right? Don't be afraid to make mistakes, right? Because what you'll have to do is you'll have to fix them, right? And that's a great way to learn, right? But what I say to everybody is stay away from using assets from the store, right? Because if it's got code in it and you don't know how to code and you're new to Unreal Engine, then you're just going to be stuck trying to fix an asset that's never going to do what you want it to do anyway. At this point, you'll never get it to do what you want it to do. Right, so there must be one thing that you guys think that you're like, how on earth do you do that? Right, so what was the other thing up? Oh yeah, that's what I was doing. I was checking the second level because I want to see if this writing on the wall works or not. Yeah, I shouldn't really go that way. Right. Oh! Right. What do you think, guys? You think that looks good? I actually think that looks okay. Yeah, I thought it looked good as well. Do you think I need blood drips off it, or do you think that's actually okay? I mean, I'm just going to make it look a mess if I try to add blood drips to it, but we can try it, you know?
Kill me.
Yeah, we like that. We do indeed like that. Right. So, do you guys know how I created that? Well, if you don't, it's rather simple. Right? Because all I do is go into my paint program, whichever one you use, right? And then I just make it 400 by 400. I could probably go smaller than that, but we're going to go with this. It's dependent on your project, how if you want to make it really compact or not, whether 256 might work. We'll try it at 256, right? So I'm going to do it in white because then when it multiplies the colour in, I can change it to any colour I want, right? So if you just have a white colour, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the background, right? So it's transparent. Then I'm going to add a layer. Then I'm going to click on this text. Then I'm going to select my new font, which I found just by looking for fonts. And then it's this crazy killer, right? Yeah, it's exactly what it is. Yeah. What I did was I just recorded the wife saying help me, right? But because she's Mexican, it doesn't sound like help me. And then I just basically use Audacity to record it. And then what I do is basically offset it. I just basically put it on a multi-track. I just add, copy and paste the tracks, and then I move them about, and then I move like the pitch a little bit of one of them, and then I just then fold them all back into one track, and then play that, and it gives you the echo and the weird sound, right? It's nothing complicated. Right, so for this one, right, we can put in another message here. Right, so we can say, let's say, set me free. Right, and this can be pretty big. Okay, it might not be able to be that big. Okay, so we can probably do this at about 66, I'd say. Nearly. Guess it's going to be 64. Okay, whatever. 64. That's probably going to work. Tell you what, I think we've got to go with 60 here, haven't we? And then that's definitely going to fit. Right, but what we'll do is and like even with this, right, you could just muck about with this, and you could cut and paste. Yeah, you convert it to a WAV file. I'll show you, right, I'll show you me doing something, right? Just give me a second. Right, but this is just basically doing a... I don't know what you mean. If I was to record a video, right, I would basically just put it into my video editor, right? And the way that does it is it separates the video from the sound, right? So you can just basically record the sound. Right, so I could output the sound of just, you know, the sound from a video, or I don't know what your use case would be from what you're talking about, right? But what we can do is we can now save this, right? So we just save as, and then we'll call it set me free, and it's going to be in sound files, right? And we save it as a PNG. Then this will flatten it down, right? And that's it. Yeah, you would just separate the two. You would separate it. It automatically will get separated if you put it in a video editor, right? So then I would output it, and depending on what type of file it was, if it was already a WAV file and I don't need to do anything, I would just import it straight into Unreal Engine, right? But if it was like an MP3, MP3 can't create a queue out of that. You've got to play that with a media player. So if it was an MP3, I'd put it into Audacity. Audacity will load it up as an MP3, and then you just basically export it again as a WAV, right? And then once you've exported it as a WAV, you can drag it straight into Unreal Engine, then it'll play it as a queue, a sound queue. Right, so we've saved the set me free, right? Will this be useful if creating a letter? A letter? What type of letter? I don't know what you mean. If I guess you want to use like a parchment paper and print text on it, then yes. It would work exactly the same way as me sticking it on a wall, except I wouldn't be sticking it on a wall, I'd be sticking it on a piece of paper. So yeah, the concept would actually be identical. So if we go to our map and go to props and messages, then we're going to have to do a bit of, yeah, you can just place a material on top of the paper. Right, you've got a plane, which is your paper, and then you've got a plane on top of that, which is going to store your material. And then your material, it depends how you want to do it. You can just have it as a text box. You could just have a widget on the top of it, right? It depends how you do it. Again, Unreal Engine, there's more than one way to skin a rabbit, okay? There's multiple ways you can do things. Right, where the hell did I save that? Did I save that in sound files like a right idiot? Yeah, I did. Right, so we'll move it to imports. And we need to make it slightly bigger here. And it's going to go into messages. Right. And then now it's in messages. I could have dragged it in from anywhere, but it's good to keep some sort of housekeeping on this. So there we've got our set me free. Okay. So now what I can do is I can go to the data table. Right. And we can do that. And then this is going to give us a 50% chance. I mean, I could set it this way and say this is going to give me a... Now, at the moment, these are all going to play the same sound cue, but the thing is I'm going to do is I'm going to create the sound cues for each of the different messages, right? And then it's going to load them up with this structure with the texture to use plus the sound to use, right? So if we now go back into here, I want to see what our set me free looks like. There it's there. Right, you can't really see it very well there, but that's okay because you're not meant to always see it very clear. Oh, and by the way, it's not meant to play the audio cue every time you pass it by.
Help me.
There we go. And now we're going to change it. Okay? We're going to make it procedurally generated because that's what I'm like, basically. So we'll go to this viewport. Right, so we're not going to change it here. But what we are going to do is we're going to go to our maps and layout parts. We're going to go to this, right? And what we're going to do is there's our carpet, there's our decal, okay? Now what we're going to do here is we're going to look at our viewport, right? Then we're going to have a look at our decal, and we're going to have a look to see we could go with that. 19. Right. Okay. So I'm going to save that. And we know that our X rotation, you should learn the programming basics because you won't be able to do a menu or anything else without those, right? So you need to learn about loops, you need to learn about arrays, variables, all that, all of the very basic fundamentals of programming, right? Now, you can learn some of the stuff about widgets, right, for your menu, but I recommend doing a menu first, okay? Now, and as I've said to you yesterday, I don't mean a menu with a play button and an exit button. I mean a full functional, everything that's in a game menu to work, okay? For two reasons. You'll learn how to do things, you'll learn about blueprints, you'll get to use all your stuff that you're learning about, which is your loops, your arrays, your variables, blah blah blah. You'll use all them and get practice using them when you're making a menu, right? And then when it comes to making your game, you'll be comfortable using widgets, right? So when it comes to making your HUD, when it comes to making your interface, your UI, you'll be comfortable doing it, right? And then when it comes to actually making the game, you'll then understand how loops work, how your arrays work, how your variables work, and then you can use that knowledge and put it into your game, right? At the moment, you're just flapping around, not learning anything really. And for both of you, you should concentrate on one thing, right? And my suggestion is you concentrate on doing a menu. Learn your code, your fundamentals of coding, and then a menu. Right, so what I'm actually going to do here is I'm actually going to make this, the angle, random, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab this, right? And then I'm going to say rotation. I'm going to say get world rotation. Right? Then I'm going to split this. And then I'm going to set it. Now, I'm not sure if I'm going to have to do it with the relative or not, but we can try it and see what happens, right? So what I'll do here is I'll split this pin, I'll drag this up. Y and Z are going to come from here and here. Then our X value is going to come from a float, which is a random float in range. And that is going to be from minus 18 to 18. And that's going to give us a random rotation of our text, but it's not going to be too much of a rotation that is going to go like upside down or anything like that. It's just going to give us a nice little variance that not all the writing is the same angle every single time. They're actually going to be different every time, but not that different that it looks weird. Okay? And that's how you do procedural generation, basically. A little bit of randomness in there, and that'll be doing for us. Right, I'm probably going to do another stream tonight in about 2 hours time, but I'm going to call it for this one. So if you've enjoyed it, hit like and subscribe. Check out the description for links to Discord. You're welcome to join, and Patreon and my previous game on Steam. Thank you all for watching, and I shall see you in a couple of hours. Bye bye for now.